Remember when EA caught hell for their pride and accomplishment microtransactions? Star Citizen just said, hold my beer. One respawn, 100,000 credits. Not kidding. Alpha 4.3.1 just turned death into luxury healthcare. Everyone's busy gawking at Pyro, taking screenshots of sunsets, posting fleet formations. Meanwhile, CIG quietly revolutionized the entire risk equation. Death used to be an inconvenience. Now it's financial planning. That moment when you're bleeding out on some backwater moon, looking at your bank balance, doing mental math about whether your gear is worth the respawn fee. That's not just immersion. That's anxiety you can't buy anywhere else. Welcome to healthcare in space. It costs exactly what you can't afford. Loading into the PTU last night was an eye-opener. Not gonna lie, it felt weird. Like, remember how we used to joke about death with minor inconvenience in Star Citizen? How many times have you charged into a bunker mission wearing your best armor just because who cares if you die, right? Wake up, grab another set, try again. But now, man, now there's this pause. This moment where you sit there, finger hovering over the accept mission button, and you start doing mental math. Okay, so if I die twice, that's 200,000, mission only pays 45,000. Is this worth it? And suddenly, every corner you turn, every decision to engage hostiles, it all carries this weight it never had before. The thing is, this isn't just some random feature. This completely flips how you calculate every risk you take. When that pirate interdicts you and demands cargo, maybe paying them off isn't such a bad idea anymore. When you see that 890 jump mission pop up with its multiple armed hostiles, maybe you bring friends this time. Everything, literally everything, changes when death comes with a price tag. So what exactly did Alpha 4.3.1 introduce? The Medgel system.
And it's not just some little addition. It's basically the backbone of all medical gameplay from here on out. Technically speaking, it's a consumable resource that you now need for two major things: respawning at all and treating any serious injuries. If you're not super into the technical side, just think of it as really expensive life insurance that you have to pre-purchase and physically carry with you or your ship. The system works with those medical beds we've had for ages. You know, the ones that used to just magically work whenever. Now they're separated into the three tiers we already knew about. Tier 3 beds, like what you've got in your Cutlass Red. Tier 2 beds found in those small clinics at outposts and rest stops. And the big Tier 1 hospital-grade beds at major landing zones like New Babbage General or Orison's hospitals. Here's the kicker though. Each tier doesn't just have different healing capabilities anymore. They've got different storage capacities, different ranges, different everything. And man, people are pissed about the prices. Forums are on fire. But what most players aren't seeing through their rage is that this isn't CIG just making the game harder for no reason. This is them finally putting some teeth into the risk/reward system. Like, your decisions finally matter in a way they just didn't before. And yeah, it's expensive, but so is crashing your ship in real life, right? Nobody said surviving in space was gonna be cheap. Okay, so here's the deal with Medgel economics that nobody's really talking about yet. Each container costs 100,000 a UEC, which, yeah, is a lot, and holds exactly 100 units of Medgel. But the way the different beds handle this stuff changes everything about medical ships. A Tier 3 bed? It can only hold one container. One. That's your Cutlass Red. That's your Apollo Medevac's basic beds. Just one container, which means exactly one respawn, or 2 major injury treatments before you're dry. Tier 2 beds can hold 2 containers, and those fancy Tier 1 hospital beds can hold 4.
Already, that changes the value proposition of different medical ships in ways we never had to think about before. And then there's the range issue. God, the range issue. So I was out near Ariel last night, right? Had this mining operation going with some ord mates. We brought the Red, as usual, parked it about 2 kilometers from the site. Standard procedure. Everything's going fine until Tycho, you know Tycho, that guy who always manages to find trouble, he gets jumped by 3 prospector pirates while scouting ahead. We rush over, but he's down. Critical. Now here's where it gets interesting. We get him back to the Red, and we realize we can stabilize him for free.
That's something a lot of folks miss. Basic stabilization doesn't cost Medgel. But then he dies from complications because, well, Tycho. And suddenly, we're looking at burning our entire Medgel supply to bring him back. One death, 100,000 gone. And that's when we learned about the range limitations. Tier 3 beds only work for respawning within 50,000 kilometers. That's basically just the local operation area. Tiers Vi, about 8 million kilometers, so most of a planetary region. But those Tier 1 hospital beds reach out to 150 million kilometers, basically system-wide. That's the difference between local urgent care and having your consciousness beamed across half the system. What CIG has done here isn't just add a consumable. They've completely transformed medical ships from convenient spawning hotels into resource management gameplay. Each respawn costs 100 units, a full container. Treating major injuries costs 50. So suddenly, you're making real choices. Do I use this to heal my broken leg now, or save it in case I actually die later? That's a question with weight to it. Real weight.
I bet you're sitting there doing the math right now. Is my medical ship even worth keeping anymore? I mean, seriously, those medical beacons pay what, 15,000 a UEC? And a single respawn costs more than 6 times that? The economics don't add up. I was chatting with Moon Patrol in Discord last night. You know, that guy who's been running medical ops since the Cutlass Red first came out. And he was saying he might just melt his Apollo for store credit. What's the point of a dedicated medical ship if you can't afford to stock the damn thing? Half the community thinks it's way too expensive. The other half thinks it finally makes death mean something. But maybe, and hear me out on this, maybe making medical gameplay expensive is the only way to stop it from becoming just another trivialized game mechanic. Remember how salvage was supposed to be this deep profession, but ended up being point beam, get money? Maybe this is CIG trying to avoid the same fate for medicine. Death should hurt, like really hurt. Not just your character, your wallet too. That's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of players. But honestly, it makes the game better. The new system creates this whole hierarchy of care that feels like an actual medical system. Need basic first aid? That's free. Anyone with a med pen or med bed can patch you up enough to keep going. But died and need your consciousness transferred to a new body? Yeah, that's premium service territory. And premium services cost premium credits. Here's the real issue though. It's not the cost itself that's broken. It's that the economic loop doesn't close. Medical beacons paying 15,000 for a service that costs 100,000 in resources is just bad math. But CIG knows this. Their communications basically said, yeah, we know the rewards suck right now. We're working on it. This is just version 0.1 of a system they'll be tweaking for years. So I go in feeling pretty confident. Got my good armor, good guns, the whole setup. Turn the corner and bam. 3 guards with literally perfect aim just lay into me before I can even react. We're talking instant down. My buddy Jake's orbiting overhead in the Cutlass Red, and I'm lying there bleeding out. And for the first time ever in Star Citizen, I'm genuinely torn about what to do. If I respawn on the Red, we burn 100,000 credits worth of Medgel. If I respawn at Everest Harbor, I lose all my gear, but save the Medgel. And I'm just lying there, literally watching my character bleed out while having this economics debate with Jake over Discord. Dude, is my Artemex worth 100,000 to you? I ask him. Hell no, he says, but your guns might be. After this weird moral debate about the value of my virtual possessions versus virtual money, we decide to save the Medgel. I respawn at Everest. But here's the crazy part. When I flew back down to the bunker half an hour later in a fresh ship, my body was still there. All my gear intact. The new persistence actually saved me from my own decision. That experience changed everything about how we approached the next mission. We were careful. We used actual tactics. We scouted properly. For the first time in maybe ever, we treated our characters like their lives actually mattered. And it felt good. It felt like an actual game with stakes, instead of just a pretty space sandbox. Jig didn't just drop this system and call it done though. They've already laid out where medical gameplay is headed beyond 4.3.1, and some of it actually addresses the concerns people have. The biggest change coming is multiple simultaneous imprints.
Right now, you can only be imprinted at one medical bed at a time. In the future, you'll be able to maintain respawn points at various locations across the verse simultaneously.
If you look back at Chris Roberts' original Death of a Spaceman design document from 2013, this is clearly an evolution of that vision, just implemented in a way that doesn't make the game unplayable for normal humans who don't have 40 hours a week to recover from a single death. The medical system will eventually include 4 different imprint categories: landing zone hospitals, like your default spawn point; ship medbeds, like your Cutlass Red; home bases, for when housing comes in; and temporary locations, like outposts or mission sites. You'll be able to choose which one to respawn at when you die, depending on where you've set up imprints. This means you'll eventually be doing some serious strategic planning about your respawn options. Maybe you keep one at your home city, one on your Org's Carrick that's exploring Pyro, and a temporary one near whatever high-risk operation you're running. For now though, there are some tactics you should know. First, that free stabilization option, use it religiously. It doesn't consume Medgel, but temporarily stops injury effects. Those precious minutes might be enough to get you to a proper hospital without burning resources. If your org runs ops regularly, stop thinking of medical ships as individual assets and start treating them as group resources. Have multiple Cutlass Reds positioned at strategic points to create redundancy. Assign dedicated refill runs. Treat Medgel like the precious resource it now is. God, you should see Spectrum right now. Complete dumpster fire. There's this massive thread, I think it hit like 500 replies within hours, where players are split right down the middle. The hardcore sim fans are loving the increased stakes, while more casual players are freaking out about being priced out of basic gameplay. Someone called Medgel the new Jumptonium, which is pretty spot on if you think about it. Remember when everyone was fighting over Jumptonium during those events? Medgel might become the next high-value commodity that orgs actually fight to control. It's actually changing how organizations operate already. The Legion and Star Watch have both updated their standard procedures to include dedicated medical ships with gel reserves for any operation with more than 5 players. Some groups are even creating specialized medic roles with specific training on resource management. You know what Tenpenny always says in the pub at Grimhex? Death is just a temporary inconvenience until the billing department gets involved. Turns out the old man was right all along. What's really fascinating about all this drama is seeing what it reveals about the community. This isn't just about mechanics. It's about what kind of game we all thought we were playing versus what CIG is actually building. Some people signed up for a casual space sim they could dip in and out of. Others want a hardcore survival experience where every decision matters. And now, we're all having to reckon with where on that spectrum Star Citizen is actually landing. Alright, so how do you deal with this new system while we wait for CIG to balance it properly? I've got some strategies that might help. First, and this is crucial, always keep at least one Medgel container in your personal inventory somewhere, not installed in your ship. Stash it at your home base. Only install Medgel in your medbeds when you're actually heading out on operations that might need it. There's zero reason to have expensive medical supplies sitting unused in ships you're not actively flying. Second, get religious about using that free stabilization option. If you've got a tier 2 or tier 3 injury, stabilization buys you time to reach a hospital without burning Medgel. I literally watched a guy waste 50 units treating a broken leg when all he needed was stabilization to get back to Lorville. Don't be that guy. Third, start forming actual medical partnerships. Remember, medical gameplay was never intended to be a solo profession. A dedicated Apollo or Cutlass Red operator can serve an entire group, spreading the cost across multiple players. Some clever groups on the server last night were running medical co-ops, pooling resources and sharing expenses like a proper space healthcare system. Fourth, and I can't stress this enough, factor Medgel costs into your mission planning. That bunker that pays $45,000 but might get you killed? Not worth it solo anymore. But if you stack 3 missions in the same area, now we're talking efficiency. The economics of risk have fundamentally changed. Last thing, don't get too attached to how the system works right now. CIG has been crystal clear that they're watching player behavior and feedback. The prices, the mechanics, the storage, all of it could change dramatically based on PTU data. Don't invest your life savings in Medgel stockpiles just yet. So to wrap this whole mess up, medical gameplay is deeper but pricier.
requires actual strategic thinking about resources, and will eventually evolve into a multi-imprint system that tries to balance meaningful consequences with player convenience.
If you're heading into the PTU, and you absolutely should, remember that your feedback matters here. Be specific about what works and what doesn't. Don't just say, it's too expensive. Say what price would make sense to you and why. The difference between 100,000 per container and maybe 25,000 could literally be determined by player testing data. Have you tried the new Medgel system yet? What's your take? Would you rather have cheaper medical resources with more gameplay restrictions? Or do you think the high cost creates the kind of stakes Star Citizen has been missing? Drop your thoughts below, especially if you're actively testing. And seriously, check out some of the Discord medical response groups that have popped up. Players are organizing actual EMS services to help each other out while sharing costs. It's easily the coolest emergent gameplay I've seen since the PTU dropped. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive into Star Citizen's new medical systems. This game keeps evolving in ways none of us predicted, doesn't it? One minute you're enjoying simple spaceflight, the next you're calculating the financial implications of getting shot. The verse isn't just getting bigger with every update, it's getting more complex, more interconnected, and frankly, more interesting. Your survival is no longer just about combat skill or flight ability. It's about preparation, resource management, and sometimes knowing when to run away instead of fight. So next time you're about to take that shortcut through an unmarked jump point or charge into a cave without proper recon, maybe take a second to ask yourself, can I afford to die today? Because in the new Star Citizen economy, sometimes staying alive isn't just the smart play. It's the only financially responsible option.